Good morning, everyone. We are going to talk about disruption. In 2022, 200 million passengers were affected by delays and cancellations in the US. Disrupted flights cost the US up to $34 billion last year. And that's, you think about hotel stays, food, beverage, all of that added up. 100-degree temperatures in the southwestern US this summer forced airlines to adjust operations in the hardest hit cities, which meant reducing fuel, baggage, sometimes leaving passengers behind. The percentage of US flights delayed in 2023 so far, 22.5% of all flights. That's massive. Jeff?
Big challenges that need to be solved. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the outlook for solutions today and in the future, leveraging some of these new technologies that are being talked about. So it's my pleasure to bring on our guests, starting with Brian Davis from Sun Country Airlines. Brian, welcome. Next up we have Theresa Wise, former Chief Information Officer of Delta Airlines. And Paul Weaver from Hyatt Hotels.
Great. We can take a seat. Well, welcome all of you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. And I want to start with you, Theresa. Something that you've been involved in this year to help, customers or passengers before, during, after a trip.
Great thing to think about. So after having spent one lifetime in the airline industry, I've sort of started a second lifetime that's very much of a portfolio career, working with, advising on the boards of a number of different enterprises kind of across sectors. So pointing to two things that really, I think, pertain here. The first is related to the satellite and space industry and the idea of massive satellites with the capability to dynamically allocate bandwidth where and when it's needed for aircraft, for customers, for Wi-Fi, for a broad range of purposes. And the second is related to the electrical grid and the reliability imperative. And again, that ability to use AI, to use advanced technology to forecast not only the degree of weather and disruption that's on the way, but also the uncertainty around it and the risk related to that.
So still working with capacity and shifting things around.
Working with capacity, shifting things around in all of those situations, but so interesting the cross-applicability of these industries.
And Brian, you come from the airline world. What's it been like, and what have you been involved in this year?
Yeah. So with Sun Country Airline, and we are the 11th largest mainline carrier in the U.S., which means I would not be surprised or offended if there's folks in this room who've never heard of us. But Sun Country's been around for about 40 years. We have 50 737 aircraft based in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. We'll carry about 4.5 million passengers this year. And most of what we do is take people from Minneapolis, where it can be quite cold in the wintertime, to warm, sunny places. We have 98 destinations we serve throughout Mexico, Caribbean, and the U.S. And airline's been around for 40 years. The current management team has been engaged for about 6 years, and that's really, our focus over that time has been to rebuild our customer-facing tech stack, and it's been, quite the process that started with our core res platform and working our way out. And this year, we kind of finally got to, kind of the icing on the cake for me, which is our IROP tools, which is, the tools in the customer's hand during a regular operation. So couldn't come at a better time when, the system is under strain from both, extreme weather events as well as staffing from pilots to air traffic control. And so happy to be focusing on putting those kind of tools in customers' hands.
Great. And Paul, on the hotel side?
Yeah, it's been an incredibly busy year at Hyatt. I think in the last year we've just ramped up our speed, just become an incredibly agile, progressive technology company. I think two of the sort of simultaneous things we've been working on is, integration of AI into our product, into our websites today, but also leaning heavily into digital storytelling. So being able to look across all of our beautiful brands and really allow them to tell their story, but doing it in a way that's very scalable and cost effective. The merger of just those two things alone has just led to massive increases in revenue, conversion. So a pretty good year for us.
Terrific. Well, I'm going to start today asking Brian the question. Brian, one of the things I love about Sun Country, first of all, for those of you who don't know the company, the expertise depth at Sun Country is really remarkable, and kudos to Jude and team. I want to talk about one of the benefits of a small company is usually this element of simplicity, which is more available, and the lack of a legacy stack. You've talked about some of the changes you've already done, but how does this apply as we look at the future and of disruptions, of how you try to take care of customers, particularly customers who don't have a lot of experience, or maybe they're travelers with difficulties in traveling?
Yeah, that's certainly one of the defining characteristics of our airline and our customer is their infrequency of travel. Like a typical customer for us would travel once a year, and they save up throughout the year and for their big family vacation. And so, our ability to shape behavior is really limited because we have limited frequency, as well as just kind of their awareness of and expectations of the system. When we think about legacy complexity, I was surprised when I showed up on scene 6 years ago with the amount, complexity just has a way of creeping into the system, with the amount of complexity that had crept into Sun Country's system. So when we kind of shifted our res platform, one of the things that we mandated to the project team was we're not just going to take all the rules from the old system and pick them up and translate them, but really use that as an opportunity to shake the Etch-a-Sketch and kind of look for all the weird corner cases that we were managing and really ask the questions like, should we continue to, and one of those, a great example would be unaccompanied minors. Unaccompanied minors, when create a lot of complexity for the airline and a lot of risk, particularly as we think about IROPS. If we have to divert an airplane because of a weather event and have a child who's traveling without a parent, how to manage that. So one of the decisions we made was to no longer carry unaccompanied minors. And while that means that there's some customers who are not being served, kind of came to the conclusion that the trade-off made us, removing rules like that from the system made us a more stable airline through simplicity.
Teresa?
So I'm just like reeling with this image of shaking the Etch-a-Sketch. I love that. So I guess when I think about this, I'm particularly drawn to that idea of the real-time kind of full journey view of the customer. And I particularly like thinking about what you were describing in terms of what technology is there, what things I can add to it. And so as I look at this, I'm particularly interested in all of the elements that already exist in some way, shape, or form that enable that end-to-end view of the journey and the customer. So, you think about it, the transaction data exists, right? Millions of little pieces out there across a lot of different companies. The infrastructure and the logic to tie it together exists. I mean, Jeff, you and your organization are working on and have really developed that. And then the delivery mechanisms exist. And so I think of flight attendants, for example, in the aisles with their smart devices. And so again, in Sun Country's case, it's not going to be the unaccompanied minor, but maybe it is that traveler who doesn't travel frequently. Maybe for another airline, it's the really high value customer. And the ability to take those elements, tie them together, and have a conversation about that customer, about this disruption, and about the fact that their Hyatt hotel has been rebooked and that they now have a new room waiting in another location, or an Uber waiting at a particularly designated location and where that is. So that's the piece that's really interesting to me, of how all of these elements, with what exists today, tie together and enable a different view.
And Jeff, that's what you're trying to do at Journera. So you want to add to that?
That's really what we're trying to do. Journera was started with a couple simple ideas that are somewhat difficult to bring to market and tricky to have clients who are ready for them. But the idea that we're all, when we travel, every one of us is on a journey. Nobody's just sitting on a plane or whiling away our time in meetings at a hotel room and so forth. We're all on some kind of journey. And it's the traveler today who has to connect all those dots every time. Anytime things go right or things go well, and you all have scenarios you could tell me. So our idea was very much that recognize travelers on a journey, connect those dots without the traveler having to do anything, and then let the brand see the journey, and let the brands from the journey view take advantage of, I can make this customer's trip better, I can make more money off this customer. And that's the vision we pursue, and making progress, and excited by this kind of a conversation, because as climate change happens, these disruptions are going to be more frequent, they're going to be more intense, and this notion of knowing the traveler's journey and dealing with it in anticipation or maybe in response is going to be really more important than ever.
Yeah, I think that urgency, right? Because we've been talking about the connected trip in this industry for so long. There's a lot of data. All of you have a lot of data. It's bringing it together, and the urgency that, even today, I mean, we're in Florida. Who expected we'd have this kind of weather?
Yeah, the giant disruptions. Paul, let's talk a little bit about what you've been up to at Hyatt and how technologies and the customer vision is evolving from your point of view.
Yeah, for sure. It's I think the lens for me is, coming from a design and a user experience background. So we've got this amazing technology coming in with AI, but we've got to balance that, I think, for the typical end user. We're in hospitality. There's a degree of authenticity and a degree of care that has to be upheld, and a degree of simplicity as well. I mentioned we've got AI systems running today, but they're mostly invisible, frictionless to our end users. So when we're giving recommendations, our target is, the right person at the right time for the right location, and we're building on that pretty successfully. This last year has brought generative AI into the mix and gives us a lot of options, and I think this is where we're doubling down in that user experience area. We want to focus on it being experiential first, not transactional first, and make that barrier to entry as low as possible. We've got dedicated UX principles, usable, inclusive, secure, contextual, and delightful. And it's pretty amazing that those align, I think, perfectly with AI. We want to make things trustworthy, accessible to everybody, and a great experience that the people can enjoy without feeling intimidated.
Do you have a favorite example? I'm just curious that you've been working on or is implemented that you can just point at?
I will talk to you about it in next year's Phocuswright.
All right.
But we've got some very exciting things on the move right now.
And I guess it's really important, especially because you have customer-facing folks, quite a lot of them, and when someone's journey is disrupted, they want to come in and they want to get taken care of, right? So that's the most important thing. Brian, I'm going to ask you sort of, about, we talked about flexibility, and you said you don't carry unaccompanied minors, but at the same time, you do have people who travel once or twice a year. How do you kind of take that AI sort of, technology, the new technology that's coming in, and how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so we are, we're a small airline, which means our resources are limited. We need to use them where they deliver the highest value, and also just, we're carrying leisure travelers, which means they're price sensitive. We can only deliver that product if we're careful with how we spend our resources. So all that to say, we're not on, we don't think of ourselves on the leading edge of technology. We're kind of on the trailing edge and like making sure that we're bringing on solutions. But the challenge that we have to solve that I'm excited about where technology is going will be able to do for us is if a flight is disrupted today, there's 186 people on that flight, there's 186 different preferred solutions to that problem. Like everybody has a different solution that would be the right outcome for them. A great example of that, in the state of Florida, we serve 12 different airports across the state of Florida. And if a flight from Orlando is disrupted, there's some people on that plane who staying in a hotel tonight and hopping on a flight from Orlando tomorrow is a great outcome. And then there's someone else on board who has a really important meeting that they need to be home for, and taking a drive to Tampa to get on an alternate flight that's leaving this evening might be their preferred outcome. And we are agnostic to those outcomes. We've got lots of options, flights on different days from different airports, and it's a matter of pairing the individuals with the outcome that is best for them. Historically, the only tool to do that has been a call center with human beings sitting at a telephone, asking people, what do you prefer? Let me go find that for you. And while that works when a flight is disrupted, we tend to not have a flight disrupted at a time. It tends to be a storm cell that disrupts a dozen flights, and so that solution just doesn't scale, and it's a terrible experience for the customer. So, I say we've been focused on delivering tools this year. This is, I would say, on that trailing edge of technology. It's kind of crude, but basically takes the customer's itinerary, turns it into the system, views it as a one-way voucher. Instead of viewing your itinerary as worth a certain dollar amount, it's now worth any domestic flight in our system, and direct the system into a change flow that allows them to see, here's the other flights leaving from alternate airports or alternate days. You pick the one that works best for you, and we're going to accept your previous itinerary as sufficient payment for that alternate travel plan. And with that includes also, single-use codes to take a lift to the alternate airport, or to kind of piece together all the pieces you need to complete the journey that's right for you. I think AI, it's exciting. It's not hard to imagine down the road where we'll be able to predict individual customers' preferred outcome and deliver it for them versus sending them to the menu to truly self-service. So a huge step in the right direction, but still excited about kind of where the future can go.
Love that.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would maybe add or think about, or kind of what you've said pops up for me is it makes me think about what these technologies are really good at and also what they're not so good at. So we're talking about things like care and empathy, and machines aren't as good at that, but they're today, I get it tomorrow, but today they're really, really good at a lot of the things that you're describing. And maybe an example of something that they're particularly good at today, in addition to that, kind of planning and optimization, is speech recognition, facial recognition, language recognition. And a kind of fun example was, I think it was the last time that I came into the US through customs. I believe that the cameras recognized me as I was walking through the customs hall, never touched a machine, never put my information in. By the time I got to the Border Patrol agent, they called me by name. They asked just a couple of things relevant to the trip I had just been on, and through the process I went. So again, really interesting to see, and then also gives me huge hope in our industry, because there's a big organization that has lots and lots of legacy technology, and they're enabling this type of change like you are. So I can't wait until next year at Phocuswright to hear what you're going to tell us about.
You of course also advise companies outside of travel. So are you seeing something there that we could bring into the travel industry that you think it is ready?
Yeah, I think that and this is a crisscross, because I think all of these industries also are looking at airlines and the airline industry and the travel industry for ideas as well. So when we were out in the green room, I was saying, that idea of operations control centers and the situational awareness, that's something that a lot of other industries are interested in copying. But some of the things that are going on there is that are some things around those forecasts of risk, the predictability, who's impacted, that end-to-end impact, who's looking for what. Just taking in massive, massive amounts of data from within their industry, from other industries as well, from other stakeholders in those industries. And I think that's the piece that's an interesting lesson for us, because solving some of these things for Sun Country probably requires customer information that goes way, way, way beyond Sun Country in order to do that. So that becomes sort of an interesting aspect, I think, as well.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. One of the things that we were talking about earlier, Brian, that I think would be of great interest, and is really about the journey, is during the interrupted operation, how you've sort of stepped ahead or are stepping ahead to think forward to this customer's lodging.
Yeah, lodging is a big part of, if we have a disruption and know that we can't get you home today, helping you find a hotel room to get in has been another focus for us. Our old system not that long ago was calling hotels in the destination, looking for 50 rooms. If the first hotel you reach says, oh, sorry, I've got 10 rooms available, we'd say, oh, that's not enough, goodbye, call the next one, until we found a sufficient room block, which could take a long time. And a lot of customers get frustrated, go find their own solution, and then send me an angry letter with a picture of their receipt saying, please pay me back for the hotel I went and got. A completely reasonable thing for the customer to go do. And so we've been able to kind of move to where now we can push the customer an email with a white label booking engine that says, like, hey, here's the rooms available. And what it allows us to do is catch the customer before they travel to the airport, but also that hotel with 10 rooms is now available until those 10 rooms are consumed, and so we can take better advantage. That rolled out earlier this year, but then we quickly discovered that the inventory is only as good as the person sitting in that hotel flagging that inventory as available in the system. And so, while we can make investments in technology, they are only as good and as useful as the end users and the inputs that are fed into it. And so it's kind of like every step of the way we have to re-educate folks and kind of to get the full use of the tools. So
Paul, when we come back next year, you're going to
Yes.
have solved that between the two of you, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to roll on that very quickly, and I think this comes back to the care element and the user experience element. Talk about call centers. We have a global property guest services group who are available 24/7 around the world. So you can get to them with a click, with an email, with a phone call. You can come through the World of Hyatt app and contact them directly or the hotel directly. So there's a huge human element in terms of the care that we have today. And so as we embark down this journey of AI, that's a real balance for us, is not to lose that care along the way.
That, I think, is what it ultimately boils down to. That's a great note to end on, the care for the customer. So Paul, Theresa, Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My friends say I'm a creature of habit.
That I love routine.
They wonder why I'm so loyal to the same brands.
But sometimes knowing that someone familiar is there
To protect me,
To value me.
helps me embrace the unexpected,
a partner who gives me courage
To travel farther.
to take a leap of faith.
to try new things.
No matter how far I travel,
I always trust Allianz Travel Insurance.
I know that they've been there before.
And I know they will be there for me again.